What you're about to witness is perhaps the most extraordinary display of military leadership psychology ever captured on live television. When Captain Ibrahim Traoré called Hollywood legend Denzel Washington, it wasn't just an emotional moment. It was a masterclass in strategic communication that revealed the tactical brilliance behind one of Africa's most successful military coups. The date, September 30th, 2022. The setting, Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou. At just 34 years old, Captain Ibrahim Traoré executed what military analysts would later call a textbook bloodless coup, removing Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba from power with surgical precision. But this wasn't just another African military takeover. This was the work of a strategic genius who understood that true victory comes not from overwhelming force, but from winning hearts and minds. The late-night talk show audience had no idea they were about to witness military psychology in action. Denzel Washington, the man who had portrayed military leaders from Malcolm X to Fences, was about to encounter the real thing. When Traoré's voice came through those speakers, every word was calculated, every pause deliberate. This wasn't just a fan calling his hero. This was a military commander demonstrating the same strategic thinking that had made him one of Africa's youngest and most effective leaders. Good evening, Mr. Washington. This is Ibrahim Traoré, President of the Transition of Burkina Faso. The introduction was textbook military protocol rank. Position, authority established immediately. But what came next revealed the psychological warfare expertise that had made Traoré's rise so remarkable. You don't know me, Mr. Washington, but when I was 14 years old, I was just a barefoot boy in Burkina Faso. I saw you in glory. I saw a black man not begging, not afraid, but strong and crying for justice. Military analysts would later note the tactical brilliance of this opening. Traoré had done what every great military leader does. He established common ground, created psychological alignment, and then delivered his strategic message with maximum impact. The choice of glory wasn't accidental. This was the film where Denzel portrayed Private Tripp, a former slave fighting in the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment during the American Civil War. Traoré, a military strategist, understood the power of that symbolism. He was drawing a direct line between the American Civil War's fight for freedom and his own military campaign to liberate Burkina Faso from corrupt leadership. That night I told my mother, "One day I'll fight for people too, like him." Here was the moment that revealed Traoré's strategic genius. At 14, he hadn't just been inspired by a movie, he had been conducting long-term strategic planning. Military leaders call this vision casting, the ability to see beyond current circumstances and plan for future objectives. Traoré had spent 2 decades preparing for his moment, studying not just military tactics but the psychology of leadership. When Traoré continued, "Years later, when the people of my country needed someone to stand, I remembered your strength, your words, your eyes. I stood not because I was fearless, but because I had seen what courage looked like in you." He was revealing the methodical nature of his leadership philosophy. This wasn't impulsiveness. This was calculated courage, the kind that military academies try to teach but rarely achieve. The room fell silent as Denzel processed what he was hearing. But from a military perspective, this was Traoré executing a perfect psychological operation. He had identified his target, Denzel, established credibility, shared experience, created emotional connection, the childhood memory, and now he was about to deliver his strategic objective. "You're telling me I helped shape a president?" Denzel asked, his voice trembling. The response came with military precision. "No, sir. You helped shape a man who refused to kneel to injustice. This wasn't just humility, this was strategic messaging. Traoré was positioning himself not as a power-hungry coup leader, but as a justice-seeking soldier. Every word was calculated to reshape the narrative. What happened next would be studied in military communication courses for years to come. Traoré didn't just thank Denzel and hang up. He understood that in warfare, whether military or psychological, you must always think 3 moves ahead. Today, I speak not just as a president, but as a man who owes a debt, and in Burkina Faso, when someone saves your soul, we do not forget. The strategic genius of this statement cannot be overstated. Traoré was accomplishing multiple objectives, simultaneously establishing cultural authenticity, demonstrating personal character, and setting up his next tactical move. This is what military leaders call multi-domain operations, achieving several strategic goals with a single action. I am officially inviting you to be honored in Ouagadougou. But more than that, I want to name a leadership school after you, a place where our children will learn to stand tall, just as I learned from watching you. Here was the masterstroke. Traoré wasn't just making an emotional appeal, he was demonstrating his long-term strategic vision for Burkina Faso's future. Military leaders understand that sustainable victory requires building institutions, not just winning battles. The choice to name a leadership school after Denzel revealed Traoré's understanding of what military strategists call force multiplication. Rather than just honoring one man, he was creating a mechanism to inspire thousands of future leaders. This wasn't just gratitude, this was strategic nation-building. The call ended, but the psychological operation continued. Within hours, Traoré's team had orchestrated a media campaign that would make NATO's strategic communications specialists envious. The video of Denzel crying went viral. But more importantly, it repositioned Traoré in the global consciousness. No longer was he just another African coup leader. He was the military genius who had moved Hollywood to tears. Military analysts watching from Pentagon offices and NATO headquarters took notice. This wasn't just effective communication. This was strategic brilliance. Traoré had used a single phone call to accomplish what most military leaders spend millions on propaganda to achieve. He had humanized his revolution, legitimized his authority, and created international goodwill. When Denzel boarded that plane to Burkina Faso, he wasn't just visiting a fan, he was walking into a carefully orchestrated strategic environment. Traoré's decision to meet him personally at the airport, without military escorts or ceremonial guards, was pure tactical genius. He understood that true power doesn't need to be displayed, it needs to be felt. The drive through Ouagadougou wasn't just a tour, it was a strategic briefing. Traoré was showing Denzel the reality of Burkina Faso's challenges while demonstrating his connection to the people. Military leaders call this situational awareness development, helping allies understand the operational environment. The visit to Traoré's childhood home revealed another layer of his strategic thinking. Most military leaders, once in power, distance themselves from their humble origins. Traoré did the opposite. By taking Denzel to his modest clay house, he was demonstrating what military psychologists call authentic leadership, the ability to remain grounded regardless of position or power. The photograph of young Ibrahim with Mama Hawa wasn't just a sentimental moment, it was strategic evidence. Traoré was providing proof of his character development, showing that his leadership wasn't accidental, but the result of careful mentorship and moral formation. Military academies teach that great leaders aren't born, they're shaped by strong influences. The decision to take Denzel to meet Mama Hawa at the rural school was perhaps Traoré's most brilliant strategic move. Military leaders understand that credibility comes not from what you say about yourself, but from what others say about you, by introducing Denzel to the woman who raised him. Traoré was providing the ultimate character reference. The scene at the school watching an 85-year-old woman still working, still serving, was more powerful than any military parade or show of force. This was Traoré demonstrating that his leadership was built on a foundation of service, not self-interest. Military strategists call this leading by example, the most effective form of command. When Mama Hewa pulled out that yellowed letter, "One day I will be a leader and I will find you. Mama, I promise," she was providing documentary evidence of Traoré's long-term strategic thinking. This wasn't a man who had stumbled into power. This was someone who had been planning to lead since childhood. Military planners recognize this as strategic intent, the ability to maintain focus on long-term objectives despite short-term obstacles. The visit to Traoré's private treasure room revealed the final piece of his strategic genius. The room, filled with books, journals, and maps, wasn't just a study, it was a strategic command center. Military leaders understand that knowledge is power, and Traoré had been accumulating strategic intelligence for decades. The handwritten notes of his dreams for Burkina Faso showed systematic planning, not impulsive action. This was a military mind that understood the importance of written orders, documented objectives, and measurable goals. When Traoré said, "All of this started with her. I'm here because she believed I was worth something, even when I had nothing," he was revealing the psychological foundation of his strategic thinking. The decision to honor Mama Hewa with a golden medallion wasn't just gratitude, it was strategic messaging. Traoré was demonstrating to his people that he valued service over self-promotion, humility over hubris. Military leaders understand that troops follow not just orders, but examples. The coordination with Denzel to create a movie about Mama Hewa's story revealed Traoré's understanding of what military strategists call information warfare, rather than just controlling the narrative through state media. He was using Hollywood's global reach to shape international perception of Burkina Faso's leadership. The decision to have Denzel announce the movie funding for schools during the American talk show was tactical brilliance. Traoré was using American media to demonstrate his commitment to education and development, countering the typical narrative of African military leaders as power-hungry and corrupt. When the surprise video call brought Mama Hewa onto American television, Traoré was executing what military strategists call a strategic surprise. The audience expected to see a typical celebrity interview, but instead they witnessed authentic leadership in action. The image of an 85-year-old woman thanking Denzel while standing next to a 34-year-old president was more powerful than any military parade. The viral response to the video, millions of views, international media coverage, donations pouring in, demonstrated the effectiveness of Traoré's strategic communication. Military leaders spend years studying how to win hearts and minds, but Traoré had achieved it with authentic emotion and genuine gratitude. The handling of Mama Hewa's final days revealed another aspect of Traoré's strategic genius, his understanding of when to step back from public attention. Military leaders must know when to advance and when to withdraw, when to speak and when to remain silent. Traoré's decision to keep Mama Hewa's final moments private showed respect for both her dignity and the sacred nature of death. The funeral arrangements demonstrated Traoré's understanding of symbolic leadership. The simple wooden casket, the personal carrying of her scarf, the walk behind the coffin without military escort, these weren't just ceremonial choices, but strategic decisions about how power should be displayed. The declaration of a national day of mourning for Mama Hewa was strategic genius, rather than mourning a political figure or military hero. Traoré was asking his nation to honor a teacher, a mother, a servant. This sent a clear message about the values his administration would prioritize. The establishment of the Mama Hawa Foundation represented long-term strategic thinking. Military leaders understand that lasting victory requires building institutions that outlast individual leaders. Traoré was creating a mechanism for sustainable social development. The international response to the story, from Niger to America, from social media to diplomatic circles, demonstrated the global impact of Traoré's strategic communication. Military analysts noted that he had achieved what many countries spend billions on diplomatic efforts to accomplish. He had repositioned Burkina Faso's image from a coup-prone nation to a country with authentic leadership. The partnership with Denzel Washington wasn't just a celebrity endorsement, it was strategic alliance building. Traoré had identified a valuable partner who shared his values and could amplify his message to global audiences. The statue of Mama Hawa in Ouagadougou represented the final element of Traoré's strategic vision. Rather than erecting monuments to military victories or political achievements, he was institutionalizing the values that had shaped his leadership. Military strategists understand that lasting change requires changing culture, not just policy. The Hawa Fund Scholarship Program for rural African girls demonstrated Traoré's understanding of what military planners call force development. By investing in education, particularly for marginalized populations, he was building the human capital necessary for long-term national development. Military analysts studying Traoré's rise and leadership style identify several key strategic principles that made his approach so effective. First, authentic leadership. Traoré never tried to be something he wasn't. His humility and connection to his roots gave him credibility that couldn't be manufactured. Second, strategic patience from his childhood inspiration to his eventual rise to power. Traoré demonstrated the ability to maintain long-term focus despite short-term obstacles. Third, psychological warfare mastery. His ability to understand and influence human emotion was as effective as any military weapon. Fourth, coalition building rather than ruling through force. Traoré built alliances based on shared values and mutual respect. The phone call to Denzel Washington wasn't just a personal moment. It was a masterclass in strategic communication that revealed why Traoré had been so successful in his military career and political transition. Every element, from timing to word choice to emotional authenticity, demonstrated the strategic thinking that had made him one of Africa's most effective leaders. For military professionals studying leadership, Traoré's approach offers valuable lessons. True strategic genius lies not in overwhelming force, but in understanding human nature, building authentic relationships, and maintaining unwavering commitment to principles. The story of Ibrahim Traoré and Denzel Washington proves that in an age of sophisticated military technology and complex geopolitical challenges, the most powerful weapon remains the human heart. Traoré's strategic genius lay not in his military tactics, but in his ability to inspire, connect, and lead with authentic emotion. As military leaders around the world study his approach, one thing becomes clear. Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't just execute a successful coup. He demonstrated a new model of strategic leadership that combines military precision with human compassion, proving that the greatest victories are won not through force, but through the power of authentic leadership.